Hey Reluctant Preppers, this is Dunnigan Kaiser. My wife Melody and I are going to be taking a much needed break for 1 week for our anniversary. We'll be releasing 3 new videos scheduled during that time and also 3 encores for your enjoyment. Take care.
Does your family ever get exasperated with you for stockpiling such things as paper towels, bottled water, or toilet tissue? Well, they certainly can't object to you stockpiling money. Silver, the only money recognized by the U.S. Constitution, and your first 10-ounce bar of pure silver can be had at spot price with no premium by going to sdbullion.com/rp. And when you buy it that way, you'll be supporting Reluctant Preppers as well by going to sdbullion.com/rp. Thanks.
This is a quick update to thank you for building our number of patrons to 70 and growing on patreon.com/reluctantpreppers.
Soon, when we reach 100 active patrons, we're going to start sending out a 1-ounce U.S. Silver Eagle each and every month to one active subscriber, so you don't want to miss out on that.
Please help us grow by subscribing today at patreon.com/reluctantpreppers.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We're always delighted to have this returning distinguished guest. David Morgan, the silver guru, is here with us again on Reluctant Preppers. David often weighs in on trends in the precious metals markets and also on the philosophy of and principles of leadership and preparedness. So, David, thank you so much for joining us here again on Reluctant Preppers.
Well, Dunnigan, thank you for having me back.
We were fortunate to be able to get on your calendar this week because you're going to be doing traveling, as you often do, to investigate some of your mining partners. You do a lot of research in the field for themorganreport.com, and glad that you're out there, putting boots on the ground to help people have, eyes and ears where they can't otherwise get to give us insight. And we'll maybe pick some of your brain on insights into other aspects of the precious metals arena tonight in our brief chat with you. First off, if we could talk about geopolitical tensions. We've certainly seen some hot spots flaring up both in around Iran and the Iranian nuclear deal fallout from the Obama years, and now we had Benjamin Netanyahu giving a speech today. By the way, those who are tracking the dates, this is Monday, April 30th, 2018, when we were doing this recording. And Mr. Netanyahu was claiming that Iran, now flush with cash from the relieving of sanctions under the Obama deal, is now able to afford this long-awaited nuclear capability that they had previously said that they weren't, pursuing. And just wanting to kind of pick your brain. I know you're not a political scientist, etc., but just this type of geopolitical tension and saber rattling, is it the kind of thing that will likely or possibly result in increased public sentiment or awareness towards precious metals as a safe haven, rather than the sort of discouragement that people have been getting from the Fed or anybody else who says they're an expert about it, saying, it's a historic, relevance only, it's a tradition. Ben Bernanke said, others, Jamie Dimon and others have said from, JP Morgan, just downplaying the importance of precious metals. Will these kind of geopolitical tensions likely raise people's interest in precious metals as a safe haven?
They will. I mean, it's all about uncertainty. Markets hate uncertainty. Most people hate uncertainty. And of course, life is filled with it. But when you get into the quote unquote war potentialities, then of course there's more tension. And on an individual or on a group basis, people tend to flock more toward precious metals as a safe haven than they do otherwise. But commenting on the geopolitical scene, just imagine this. Imagine that these political leaders from Iran and Israel and the U.S., Canada, Australia, China, Russia, go to a secretive dinner meeting in an undisclosed location at a great big table. And they're all just laughing at us because they all get along And this whole thing with this tension here, that tension there, this money's brought this distress to this group doesn't like this group, there's more tension, is all a big joke. Imagine that they're all in on the same story, in the same scenario, and it's all a hypothetical situation, somewhat like the Orwellian War is Peace, ignorance is what, slavery is whatever, and it's just ridiculous. I mean, this ministry of truth is bringing ideas to the public fore that aren't necessarily so. I'm not saying that the Iran no deal is an Iran no deal. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that you really have to think these things through from a higher level, because if you see them at the level that's given in the mainstream press or even the alternative press, maybe you're thinking at a level that really isn't accurate. Maybe these guys are all in bed together, and it is a big joke on us, and they're just causing these tensions to flow money around and create this big scenario like was outlined in this never-ending war in 1984. What if that is the real idea? And this whole thing about the banking system, which is, of course, one area that I am pretty familiar with and study avidly and have in the past, is all about, well, who's the biggest enemies? North Korea? Well, they're outside of the mainstream banking system. Iran? Well, they're outside the mainstream banking system. And Cuba? Those Cubans are going to take us over. I mean, I'm joking and being facetious on purpose for those that don't know it, but they're a big enemy too. So it seems as if the master of control seems to be the financial system or money at large. And I have to laugh and digress a bit, Dunnigan, but I forget who it was that said something about, I want to get this right, but it was like, well, that doesn't matter because money's involved, blah, blah. It's all about power. And I thought, you know what? I disagree, because as far as I'm concerned, money is power. So if it's all about power, then you could substitute it's all about money or follow the money. So I want to make that point, because there's too much running around. It's sort of like the red-blue Republican Democrat debate. If you really look at it, if you're really objective and you go to a level up, what would you say? Well, I would say
like
this.
Two teams playing the same game. It's a farce.
The same game, because everyone is a registered socialist. Every one of them. I mean, you can't do anything as a U.S. citizen without a Social Security card, which means you're a registered socialist. You're either a red socialist or a blue socialist, but you have determined that the government knows better than you, and if you want to get any kind of a job, bank account, anything, you have to register as a socialist. That's the objective truth, but that's a higher level that no one ever thinks about, because my team's better than your team, and my team's going to make this better, and my team can do that, and you guys aren't fair, and it's ridiculous. But no one has the intellectual or the wherewithal to think outside of this paradigm, and that's what they want us to do. They want us to run around on this never-ending rat race and have these discussions with our co-workers because it's so important. What's important is that you become free, but no one knows what free means. They think that they're free just because they could choose between red or blue. That's not a choice.
Yeah, we had G. Edward Griffin, the author of The Creature from Jekyll Island, Another Look at the Federal Reserve, on our channel, and he talked about how people get so hung up on right wing and left wing, and he said finally you realize that both of those are two wings on the same ugly bird of collectivism, and how you just mentioned a few minutes ago about follow the money, and if we could chase that lead for a moment, because we've been told that, again, by some of these powers that be, Ben Bernanke is one, Jamie Dimon's another, and so on, that there's no modern day significance to gold and silver. But doesn't that fly in the face of, if you follow the money, what are these powerful central bankers doing? Whether it's the China, India, other Asian Rim countries, where is the gold? Where has there been sovereign demand for gold or central bank demand for gold? And what, if you follow the money, what have they been doing for the past decade now with these low prices environment?
Well, you know the answer. I mean, I'm going to go one step further and try to keep on this meme about thinking one level up.
Please do.
Or taking a different perspective, maybe a bigger, broader, higher perspective. But, there's been massive amounts of gold moving into China and Russia both over the last decade. But if you go back, I think it'd be about 15 years now. And you look at the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, the banker's bank, the bank that basically all other banks are required to report to. At one time, this is no longer true because everything's secret now, but at one time you could actually be a shareholder in that bank. That's no longer true. And at the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, 100%, all recording was done in gold only. They didn't care how many fiat dollars or euros or yen or Deutschmarks you had. All they cared about was how much gold did you own. Now, if gold is so important to the Ben Bernankes of the world or the central banks of the world, then why would the banker's bank require all participant banks to report gold only? I think that answers the question. But of course, this is something that very few are aware of. And, someone's going to put something in the comments section about, yada, 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 know everything. And they won't even do the research to back up what I'm saying. Now, I don't know if you can dig that out on the web or not. I think you probably could, but it's true. That's how it used to be. No longer true. The BIS basically bought back all shareholders, and how they report now is to be determined. I don't know. I don't know if anybody outside the system does. But, watch what they do, not what they say. They make fun of gold, but yet they all seem to want it.
At a domestic level in the U.S., we've heard multiple people claim, and we've seen some documentation to that effect, that the United States Constitution only authorizes silver coinage under the control of the Congress as the official money or currency, of our country. Could you weigh in on what your people that you've talked with or research that you may have done reveals about the true nature of silver, for example, as the official currency of the United States versus this fiat paper money that's being diluted constantly with QE programs, et cetera?
I'll be happy to, and I'm going to just put out the presupposition because I may misstate something. So refer to the book Silver Manifesto, where that's probably, because it was edited so many times, more official than what I remember writing about it, but I certainly could speak to it. So under the Coinage Act of 1792, silver is the official money of the United States, and gold is actually put in as being legitimate, but was put in as part of, silver. In other words, weight to weight of silver. So there's a ratio between the two in monetary terms. Mm-hmm. But the dollar, of course, is defined as a weight. The dollar is a weight. It's not a piece of paper. It's not a note. It's not a bill. It's not a token. It's a weight. There's 371.25 grains of 999 fine silver. And that doesn't have to be 999 fine. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. So if you look at something as simple as a United States Silver Liberty, or commonly known as a Silver Eagle, see if I can dig one out real quick. So if you look at that, you're looking at Silver Liberty, Eagle's that side, Liberty's on that side, and it says $1 on there. It's printed in there, but it's also 1 ounce. Well, 1 ounce is much greater. It's about 25% greater than 371.25 grains of fine silver, which is $1, which is this weight, which I'll show you right now, which is a Morgan dollar. Isn't that funny? But there's the eagle there on one side, and there's the face on the other side.
Okay.
Now, these two don't weigh the same, but they're both stamped as $1. So even the Treasury doesn't seem to know what $1 is. But the Coinage Act of 1792 has not gone away. There's no law that has ever come in and said that you can't pay for something with these, or with these for that matter. But I'm off base here, Dunnigan. But
this is actually going to be really fascinating, and I appreciate you showing us the physical examples and the history lesson too.
Yeah, so no one really even goes that deep. I mean, and that's very subtle. I mean, it's just like, well, so if you were going to be paid in dollars, which one would you want? I'd take the newer ones. Why? Because you're getting about 25% more silver, and if $1 is a weight of silver, then I could take that weight of silver that's not the same as the constitutional dollar and make, there's a heck of an arbitrage there. So anyway, I digress to come back. I think that this idea where these states are saying, you can take gold or silver as a form of payment. I'm not against it, but in theory, and I talked to Dr. Edward Vieira about this, and I listened pretty carefully, and really, there's no need to do that. I mean, really, there's already the ability to do so. Now, the problem is everyone is so undereducated, and for this to work at Walmart or your gas station, you would have to be able to spend it at face value, which is $1. And even at $16.50 silver, where we're at today, this is worth probably $18.50. It's worth at least $2 more because of the minting costs and transportation.
Sure.
So, you're going to be spending 20 times more value than you should to buy a loaf of bread, a gallon of gasoline, whatever. But in reality, if you had 10 of these and you went into a gas station, you put 10 of these on the counter and said, I want $10 of gas, you could get $10 of gas, and they could not refuse you. If they tried to make a big fuss about it, and this is like a thought experiment, it's all true, everything I'm telling you is true, you could force them by law to take it because it's legal tender. So this is a problem in a way, either side that you have. You have the problem that you don't need to make any new law in order for this to be accepted. The problem you have is to accept it at the market price, not at the legal tender price. And that, of course, is what we all want, because the market's determined that as of today, however it got there, manipulated or not, the price of silver is, less than $17. Well, I've already just said a bunch of gibberish because I said $17. Well, if that's a weight, they just said that one of those things is worth 17 of those things. If $1 is a weight, now how does that make any sense? It doesn't. One doesn't equal 17 and on and on. So probably confusing everybody. I'm not trying to. I'm trying to get everyone to think.
No, I think you're waking us up to the fact that we've been confused for quite some time now, and people have become accustomed to the bad dream we've all been asked to dream together. But you're saying, hey guys, wake up. This is the real deal. It's in.
Yeah. Well, let's go. Yeah. Well, let me go one more step on the thought experiment. So let's just say, for example, you have a little extra time in your day and you're at the gas station. I'll use that analogy. Most people, drive. So you go into the counter and, these people are half asleep anyway. I'm not trying to make fun of anyone. And you say, do you accept dollars? And the person goes, oh, I do. Of course we accept dollars. So then you throw one of these on the counter and it does that. And you throw that down and say, you accept those. Do it at a McDonald's, do it at a grocery store, do it at a gas station. So, well, I don't know. What is that? Well, that's $1. Of course, this isn't $1. This is 25% more than $1, like I just discussed. But I digress to come back and say, well, I don't know. I better get my manager.
Yep.
Now think about this. In my lifetime, the only thing that was accepted as legal was 90% silver coinage up until 1964. So had anyone put a bunch of, this stuff on the counter and said, hey, I want to buy gasoline with this stuff, and it didn't say it was exchangeable for silver, you would have been frauding the people and you would have been thrown in jail. So in my lifetime, we've gone from where silver was the money and anything that was not could be, I'll say could, not would be considered fraud, to where now only frauds are accepted and silver isn't.
Right. That's the upside down world. That's why I was saying I didn't mind you waking us up here. In fact, as a young guy, my older brother and my dad were avid coin collectors and bill collectors, and they had bills that said on them both silver certificate bills that said payable to the bearer on demand in silver coin, and I believe we had gold certificate. If not, I know I've seen pictures of that saying payable to the bearer on demand, $50 in gold coin. So, but those no longer have any weight. I mean, there was a day that came when you could no longer go into the bank and demand your coins.
That's right. Yeah, in 1968, I forget the exact day, but through part of 1968, you could actually take a silver certificate and exchange that silver certificate for silver. And then after that date, that was it. You're out of luck. So now it's a collectible. if you have a $1 silver certificate, I keep saying $1. I mean, what else do you say? It's so much in the vernacular. This is what we refer to it, and I do too every day. But it really isn't a dollar. It's a printed Federal Reserve note that says dollar on it, but it has nothing to do with the weight of silver. But nonetheless, that is just a collectible now. That's all it is. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm trying to dig one out of my desk drawer, and I don't have easy access to it. But you're right. I mean, this is something that I've gone over in some of my earlier videos years ago when I was sitting down at a conference in Arizona. That's a silver certificate right there.
And right underneath where it says $1, if you can you hold that a little bit closer to the webcam? See if we can get it a little bit closer and up a little bit. Right underneath where it says $1. Yeah, we can't quite read it, but that's okay. Maybe you can read to us what it says under $1.
Yeah, I'll turn on the light here too. I don't have my glasses, but I can see well enough without them. Silver certificate. This certifies that there is on deposit in the Treasury of the United States of America $1 in silver payable to the bearer on demand. And that's what it says. You can probably get it. The other one I have here, which is off base a little bit, but this is one that's very misunderstood. And it's funny you bring up G. Edward Griffin, because he's about the only one that I've found that's done the amount of research I have. And I don't want to make this about me and him, but it just happens to be where there's a lot of information out there about Kennedy and the United States note, and about it being tied to silver. I have not been able to verify that at all. I have verified that they exist. That's a United States note. That is what came out from the Treasury, irrespective of the Federal Reserve. And this was Kennedy's executive order. I think it's 11110. But it is not directly tied. And what's interesting is what I just read. If this was tied to silver, it would say so, just like what I just read to you. But this says $2 United States note. It's got a red seal on it. I don't know if you can see that.
Yep.
And it says the United States of America, $2. This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. What's interesting in here is the top of it, right where I'm going to point. It says United States note. It does not say Federal Reserve note. So what makes this so interesting or valuable to think about is that this was printed by the U.S. Treasury alone. It wasn't printed by the banking cartel. And that, among several other things, in my very studied opinion, and I think this was one, but that's opinion only, was the last straw that broke the camel's back when it came to the assassination of Kennedy. There's many things that he did that upset the powers that be, but nothing upsets them more than trying to take over their money power. And that's what this was about. It was basically, and whether silver was involved or not, from my very deep study, and again, Ed has verified it with me, and Ed and I are fairly close, actually. He's coming here to Spokane for the Red Pill Expo, June, I think, 21st, 22nd, 23rd. I'll be there myself. But that's the whole idea, was that, excuse me, that all this stuff is just in an entire fantasy land. Nothing is real anymore. I mean, the food we eat is genetically modified. The air we breathe has been aerosol sprayed. The water we have has been fluorinated. I mean, there's so little in this world that's really real, let alone a real person. And what the heck do I mean by that? But what I mean by that is basically we're been sought up into these games, red, blue, and what's important, that isn't important. There's very few real solid people running around in this country from my very studied viewpoint. And of course, I'm old, I'm cranky. I've got, a lot of things that probably have characterized my thinking over the years that only people that walked in my shoes would come to the same conclusion. But as an experiment, how many people can you stop on the street give them a pen and a small pad of paper and say, write down the 3 most important things that exist by being a human being, and see what you get back. Most people probably couldn't even think of 3 things, let alone know what's that meaning.
Do you mean in their lives or in general?
I would ask them specifically for their lives.
I see.
Maybe ask it both ways, and then say, well, in general, generally speaking, for humanity's sake,
right.
What would you say?
Now, again, back to thought experiment, I heard from you in the past that you've had a habit, and you were able to just reach into some drawers and pull out silver coins and silver certificates and so on. And I didn't know that, but I wasn't that surprised. But you talked about how you even will carry silver eagles with you and leave them as tips for waiters and waitresses and that kind of thing. What message do you deliver with that when they ask what the heck this is?
Depends. Sometimes I just leave them, and leave a business card, and sometimes even a business card. But this is privately minted, friend of mine, Golden State Mint. And these are 1/10 ounce silver coins, we'll call them medallions, I guess, which are privately minted. Normally, I just tell them what it is. I'll say this is 1/10 ounce of silver. Roughly, it's worth 2. And I'll say the word dollars usually, so there's no confusion, or 2 Federal Reserve notes. Those things we call dollars.
Sure. Right.
I leave it at that. Like, what do you mean the things we call dollars? Never mind. And I've very rarely gotten an email back at my public email account on my Hotmail account about, wow, you kind of woke me up. I didn't know that you were blah, 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 and did da-da-da-da. Not that I'm anyone. Believe me, Silver Guru thing and all that, it's all tongue-in-cheek. I mean, from my perspective, going back to the 3 questions, I think it's very important in life, and this is me. It doesn't mean it's right for you, is to have a purpose for your life that's greater than you are. My purpose in life is far superior to anything I personally can do. My purpose is to try to teach and empower people to understand the benefits of an honest financial system. That's a much more powerful idea than anything I could ever bring to the table. And it's not just me doing it, right? I mean, you've got all kinds of people out there that are doing it in different ways, shapes, and forms. You're one of them. So this is an ideology or an ideal, I like to call it, that I'm part of. But it's certainly bigger than me. But it gives me a passion and a resolve to keep going on days that aren't so great, or when I've been beat up or whatever, to move onward, because it's that important to me as a being of being human. Then for me, how much silver can I die with? I mean, that's almost immaterial to me. What's more important is how many people I can wake up on the road. And is silver the answer? And the answer is probably not, but I think it's part of the answer, which means, first of all, we got to think about honesty throughout the system from top to bottom. But remember one of my quotes, and again now, David, your ego. Yeah, my ego. It's like when you can lie about money, you can lie about anything. I mean, think about it. Just think about what I just said. I mean, everything that we have in this world, unfortunately, has to be earned one way or another. Unless you're on a Polynesian island and can live off bananas, coconut, and fish, and maybe a few people are, and God bless them, most of us have to strive for that legal tender, as Jackson Brown said in this song, in order to do things that are natural to a human being. Have shelter, drink water, breathe air, and eat something, which is sad in a way.
You've just touched on something a minute ago. I wanted to circle back quickly, though, to a question you raised a few whiles back. You talked about it's not necessary. We've had states like South Dakota, and we have actually a relative who was running for the state house in South Dakota, and actually a state congressman, or member of their state house. Wyoming recently passing legislation about needing to accept silver as payment and currency. But you're saying it's not necessary for states to do that. And that gets back to that argument that it's already in our U.S. Constitution. Is that where you're going with that?
Right. It's a fine argument, and I'd have to defer to someone smarter than me on the topic, which would be Edwin Vieira. But first of all, I know this much. What I said earlier is that, if you spend a U.S. Eagle at face value, there's no argument. That's a given. The problem we have is accepting silver at the market price. And that's where this legislation comes into effect, because now you're in a situation of, the question of what is a dollar? Mm-hmm. What is a dollar? I mean, I started that. Well, is it this? or is it the one in the Constitution, which is about roughly 3/4 of an ounce? Or is it the one that's printed up by this banking cartel that's mostly Europeans? Or is it the one that's printed, in South America that says the word dollar on it? I mean, what is a dollar? If you ask Bernanke, he wouldn't be able to answer. I mean, even didn't Greenspan, I'm digressing again, but didn't Greenspan have a hard time describing what money is? I think I vaguely remember that.
Right. That was the thing Congressman Ron Paul was pressing him on, is this money, holding up a silver coin. What about something you just touched on a minute ago, and you said it quite well. You said if you can lie about money, you can lie about anything. We've had Jerry Robinson, author of Bankruptcy of Our Nation, who's a Christian economist, on talking about the critical. It's one of the few things that's absolutely forbidden in the Bible as being inexcusable, and that's depriving a worker of their just wages. And what you're talking about is that we all have ourselves, as well as our elder generation that's before us, if they're still alive, who worked their whole lives and gave up their life energy and their lifetime for wages, and they tried to earn that, save that, and now want to try to retire on that, sometimes with pensions or whatever. But these illusory and unjust and unconstitutional changes and distortions and renamings that have happened with our currency in real ways are depriving workers of their just wage by basically stealing from people who worked and saved. Is there any recourse for people? I mean, we have real people, like you mentioned, real people who worked real blood, sweat, and tears and traded for their real work. They got something in return. What can they do to prevent this constant erosion of their wealth, this theft of their wealth, by people who are willing to lie about money and lie about other things as well?
Well, solidarity. I mean, if you look back at one of the earlier wars, I wrote about it. I'm not sure I wrote about it in the Silver Manifesto, but I did an article on it. And part of it may have come from Charles Savoy, actually. But in India, the soldiers were demanding payment in silver only, and they had solidarity. They would refuse to fight. So if you're, some general or some entity, some corporate state, and you need to have this battle go on, and you need these, fighter bees out there doing your dirty work for you, and they all put down their rifles until they're paid in silver instead of in rupees, you got a problem. So that could happen. And I say could, not would, and I doubt it would, because, first of all, for people to agree, it's very difficult, especially when the powers that be have basically a never-ending kaleidoscope of monotonous BS that continues to make certain that people have a difference compared to their neighbor that they could get angry over. So in other words, they continue to stir the pot so that they can't form solidarity. And even if they were able to form solidarity, and let's say that a big group like the UAW decided they wanted to be paid in silver only, it never go up the chain of command and get voted on at the hierarchical level because of a lot of reasons. But one reason is that silver's price varies in the terms of dollars, which is ridiculous because, I use the word dollars, but it's ridiculous because silver is an element on the periodic chart that's been known to be money for thousands of years. It also has tons of really important usage in modern technological society, and it doesn't change. I mean, that troy ounce of silver doesn't vary. It's there forever until it's destroyed somehow. So what changes is the fluctuation in the currency, not the fluctuation in an ounce of silver. But no one can even think that far. So they say, well, we certainly, we'd like you to get paid in something that you consider to be valuable, but how valuable is it? The price changes all the time, which is really saying that silver doesn't change whatsoever at all. What changes is the perception of what these phony baloney pieces of paper that make up the ability to buy one. And I'll go a step further. Let's just, as a thought experiment, say that gold doesn't exist for a moment, because, I can be the silver guy. And let's say that we're only paid in silver. So let's say, for example, that all the silver that exists in monetary form right now is roughly 2 billion ounces. And right now, round numbers, there's about 360 million people in the United States. This is rounded to 333 million, so I can do the math real easy. So if you take that 333 times 3, you got a billion, and you multiply that times 2, you've got 6. So basically, if every man, woman, and child in America was paid 6 ounces of silver, that would be basically all the money in the world. Now, I excluded gold in the thought experiment. Remember that. So if you have all the money in the world, and it amounts to 6 ounces of silver per person in the United States, which is only 5% of the world's population, how valuable as money do you think silver could be? Am I making any sense, or have I lost you?
Yeah, no. That's exactly. I mean, this reminds me of something that I think Mike Maloney had mentioned at a conference several years back, where he talked about what is the fair share, quote unquote, fair share of silver. In other words, if you don't have physical silver in your possession now, by the time everybody wants it, your share will be a fraction of an ounce compared to the rest of the world's population, like maybe a 14th of an ounce or some tiny little sliver like that. So that would not be the time to be trying to get your share if you wanted some. And I did have one thing that came to me as you were talking about this stuff was, I thought you were going to go with this was, as you've been taking things to the next level, is, okay, so they took us from a physical, tangible, unchanging, useful medium of silver. They took us to these so-called misnamed tokens called dollars that were in that have been completely detached from their actual constitutional definition relative to silver. But then, what about that? They're even trying to take dollars away from us. So even people who want to even hang on to physical notes are finding that transactions, you get challenged if you try to take out too much cash out of the bank, or you have to justify it if you try to put too much in. And this whole push towards a cashless society, do you think that that's really coming quickly and coming soon? And what do you think the impact of that will be on the individuals who, again, I'm gonna keep giving back to these poor working souls who have worked their whole lives and want to be able to hang on to the fruits of their labor?
Well, the trend is easy to see. We all know that. So the trend is in place. I think it'll happen much more rapidly than most people think. The ability to manifest what's called artificial intelligence, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now, but AI's ability to basically manifest itself in any human's activity and do a better job at a lower cost is inevitable. So basically humans become, from a worker bee perspective, almost useless. So now what do you do? And there's all kinds of proposals of, a basic income provided for everyone and this type of thing. So it's pushing everyone toward dependency and confidence in the system that somebody can take care of me, that I'm dependent on a system of digital currency so I don't ever have to think about anything. And there's very little thought behind it because there could be an electrical problem or even a computer glitch or a bug in the system or whatever. And now China is leading the pack with doing this social crediting system, which is more powerful than money. And, I've been a big advocate that money is power. I just said it earlier in the program. But now what's becoming more important is your allegiance to the state is more important than your monetary power, because since you have nothing outside of the system, if you have, let's say, $2 million, but your social credit is low because you've written anti-state articles on your blog, when you go to buy a first-class ticket, you're denied. In fact, you might not only not get a first-class ticket, you may not be able to ride an airplane. You're forced to ride a bus. And this is happening. This is not a joke. This is just something I thought up or made up. This is taking place in China right now as we speak. And I think that's sort of the precursor to having that on a global system. So before, if you had money, you could pretty much circumvent that kind of an attack by, hiring somebody or hiring a private plane, which you might still be able to do. But the point I'm making is it's going to be based more on your allegiance to the state than anything else. So your allegiance to the state could and is trending to be more important than what your quote unquote financial freedom quotient is. Isn't that something to ponder? Again, we're looking at this whole thing from a different level than we normally do.
So taking it right back to that individual again, people who want to maintain their personal fruits of their labor, people who want to maintain their liberty and their freedom going forward, sounds like you're advocating that they seriously consider holding at least some physical precious metals as something that does help them to remain free and able to have choices about what they do. Because like the bartering that you seem to imply there about, if the official system says you are thinking politically incorrect thoughts, you don't get to do whatever this privilege is, then you may have to resort to barter to be able to be a free person, to be able to live your life.
Absolutely. And, even that may not work in all circumstances, but the past history is showing us, you don't give up your gold. You want enough gold to pay off the border guard, right? Yeah. When you got to leave town. I mean, that, we laugh, but it's true.
And in fact, some of the vendors, I'm thinking of goldsilver.com, again, Mike Maloney's, has their gold without borders, gold jewelry, that kind of thing. And work with some coworkers who will reach inside and pull out their gold necklace and say, "This is just."
I do.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't have it on. I usually wear a chain when I leave the country because I've got a gold coin on there and a chain, and that's money anywhere in the world. Money, so I use the right word. But yeah, well, we could probably wrap this up, or not. I could continue on. You got me kind of, I got myself a bit irritated, but. These basic concepts. So let's go back to what you just said. I just want to add on that, when you look at making a private transaction with a piece of silver or gold for that matter, I mean, that's everything that some of these cryptos purport to be, which means that it's really anonymous and it's untraceable and all that stuff. And I'm not advocating, and you're going to hear, some of the establishment types saying, well, it could be criminal activity. Look, more criminal activity goes on with Amazon gift cards than any other form. So, get off my case, do a little research. So back on point, a lot of these cryptos purport to be anonymous and all that, and they're really not. And the other thing, and I don't want to get into name calling, but a few of my friends are more, let's say, adaptive to the crypto world than I am. And that's okay. I'm very much free market and very much for alternative currencies. But, if Bitcoin is so great, just hand me one. Just put one in my hand. And you can't. You can write down a ledger code and you write down the key and all that, and you can hand me that on a piece of paper. But that is not a Bitcoin. That might be access to a Bitcoin. But that's like me giving you the combination of my safe to get in and get access to some silver. It's not the same thing. Access to silver isn't silver, just like access to a Bitcoin isn't Bitcoin. But you can't put a Bitcoin in my hand. So I just still look at the physicality of the whole thing. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. What I'm stating is a fact. And for people to think about it and what is its real value, especially in, let's say, harder times where you might not have access to your phone. Or what if Big Brother comes by and takes your phone? Or they decide to close down phones in a certain area because these people aren't being politically correct. Lots of the stuff's already occurred.
Yeah, we've actually had our channel and others on YouTube that have been economically damaged by some policies that are completely outside of our ability to control, influence, or all we can do is complain, but you can't complain to a real human about it. But if you say the wrong thing or use the wrong words or whatever that are considered, even those things that are considered quote-unquote controversial can get you demonetized. And it's like, well, controversy just means people are discussing a topic that of importance to them, about which they don't entirely agree. They're trying to seek, trying to evaluate a proposition. That controversy is a good thing in a free world. David, I know we've been exploring quite a bit of the facts and about the philosophies of real money. If people want to follow more of your work on the facts and philosophies of real money, where can they find you?
Well, first of all, I do a podcast. This show will be up on our podcast channel, and I just, go to iTunes and type in the Morgan Report. You'll find our podcast. The other place is to get on our free email list, and that's achieved in one of two places. You can go to themorganreport.com, or you could go to richesinresources.com. Either one of those places will get you on our free email list.
Well, David, as always, thank you for joining us. We've been speaking with David Morgan, the silver guru, on Reluctant Preppers. And David, our viewers are always eager to have you on, and there's always lively comments. And frankly, folks, we don't mind if you put controversial comments underneath these videos. We encourage lively debate. So, David, thank you for joining us and being part of our community of Reluctant Preppers.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and I enjoyed it. I hope you did. Certainly, something that I very much like to help people think and educate them. And, this thing about the dollar, I have to laugh because, and from the perspective of the Treasury, the troy ounce is sort of the standard in the precious metals world. Everything is pretty much based on troy ounces. So you got a troy ounce of gold, or 400 troy ounces of gold, or 100. And so silver's the same thing. And so it makes sense from the modern era to put in a 1 ounce coin. But to call it dollar makes me laugh, because really the Treasury knows better than that. But they chose to do it. So be it. I just have to add on here. I know we're going extra long. This is something I learned, and I've certainly am not a know-it-all. I'm a learn-it-all. And this is one I learned at a conference of mine. One of the mining executives I'm pretty close to, deep thinker and a smart guy, said there was a great arbitrage going on in Canada, because at one point in recent times, meaning in my lifetime, the Canadian 1 ounce coin is stamped $5 Canadian, okay? And the price of silver was like $4 US. And the Canadian equivalent at that time was almost par. So in other words, you could, for a very brief time, have arbed paper Canadian dollars into physical silver at a profit.
Interesting.
I didn't know that. And of course, I didn't take him at his word, even though I trust him totally. I looked it up. But yeah, there was a brief opportunity where you could have actually done that. Isn't that something?
There's a lot about the difference between money and currency that we have to learn. And you're right, most people's thought process is not only never get the chance to go there because we're never taught these things, but we're frankly distracted and discouraged from going there, and frankly misdirected. I used to be a magician by hobby, and my son as well. And that's one of the tools of the trade of a magician is misdirection. You always try to get people to look somewhere else and not where they should be looking. So, folks, you're looking in the right place here. You're getting straight scoop. So, David, thank you, as always, for joining us on Reluctant Preppers.
Totally my pleasure. Thank you.